The story begins in the dark, oppressive wastelands surrounding the Demon Lord's palace, where the four great mages fight it alongside a young hero, struggling to defeat it for the sake of the human race. As the giant monster captures the hero, the four mages bombard it with powerful elemental spells, forcing it to drop him. After the hero is secured, the mages regroup to begin another assault on the Demon Lord. Though the lightning mage, called Eftel, struggles to catch his breath, faced with all the mages in one spot, the Demon Lord unleashes mighty beams of destruction towards them, but they block his attacks with magic shields. While the Demon Lord is distracted, the hero jumps out from the cover of the shields and drives his sword into the monster's head. Finally, Eftel stuns the Demon Lord with a devastating electric shock, which gives two other mages the chance to pierce straight through its head. With its body destroyed and powers depleted, the Demon Lord lets out one final scream of agony before succumbing to his injuries. Watching the fallen monster, Eftel is unable to believe he achieved such a huge victory. Afterward, the mages return to their kingdom, where the king holds a grand ceremony to celebrate their victory. In front of the rejoicing kingdom, he awards all four of the mages with the title of Emperor. Knowing that only a pure-blooded noble can receive this grand title, the Lightning Emperor Eftel tears up with joy since he is only a commoner. As he accepts the title with gratitude, the entire kingdom erupts into cheers. Years later, the mighty Lightning Emperor has grown old. After gaining much fame and prestige within the kingdom, he has accepted several talented young magic students. One of his young students is a demon girl called Merlin, who lost her mother during the fight against the Demon Lord. At that time, Eftel had found her as a crying infant, so he adopted her and raised her as his own out of guilt for accidentally killing her innocent mother. Years later, he teaches magic to Merlin just like all the other human children in his care. In one of his lessons, the Lightning Emperor makes all of his students concentrate and hold their magic for a little while to hone their focus. Then, he orders them to release the magic and prepare to practice level 4 spells with him. However, Merlin asks the old man to rest, since she thinks he has been pushing himself too far. Watching the concern in her eyes, Eftel feels guilty, thinking that he doesn't deserve the concern from an innocent girl whose mother died from his actions. In reality, the truth would be too painful for the young girl, so Eftel remains silent and instead begins teaching the level 4 spells. Suddenly, Merlin asks him to jump to level 6 spells. Although the other students are shocked, since 2 levels would be a crazy leap for them, Eftel knows that Merlin holds the immense talent required to progress so quickly. Still, he reminds her that it's not good to rush the fundamentals, so she gets frustrated and remains silent. Afterward, Merlin sneaks out into a nearby forest, gripping her magic staff as she makes a difficult decision. She steals her grit and moves forward, arriving at the entrance of a cave deep within, where she wants to defeat the powerful monster slumbering inside. By proving her strength, Merlin hopes that she can take over Eftel's work and teach the students in his place, so the old man can finally rest. Unfortunately, the young girl has no business messing with monsters 20 times her size, so she ends up running away after her level 4 spells completely fail to damage the cave monster. As the monster catches up with her, Merlin realizes there's nowhere to run, so in a desperate attempt to survive, she tries to cast level 6 magic despite having 0 experience with it. With some incredible focus, she successfully casts a level 6 lightning bolt at the monster behind her, pleasantly surprised by her own skill. However, the spell is still unable to defeat the monster, which roars and knocks her away with a powerful swipe of its paws. Soon, the angry monster is right in front of Merlin, who closes her eyes and accepts her fate. While awaiting her death, she is startled by the sound of a powerful lightning bolt, so she quickly opens her eyes. With the monster no longer in sight, she spots Eftel walking towards her. Relieved to be saved, Merlin bursts into a big smile, but then she recoils as he starts scolding her for risking her life. Eftel reminds the young girl that even with her God-gifted talent, she will doom herself to failure by progressing too quickly without properly learning the fundamentals of lower-level magic. As the old man rambles away, Merlin is shocked to see that the injured monster has reappeared behind him. Before she can say a word to warn him, Eftel raises his hand and completely vaporizes the evil pup into smithereens. Afterward, he takes Merlin back home, who keeps on dreaming about her master's incredible strength. Suddenly, doubles over and starts coughing blood, so Merlin gets worried for him. All this time, the old man had been trying to appear strong in front of his student, but his age has caught up to him. Merlin reveals that she already knew about his illness, so Eftel finally realizes why she has been rushing to get stronger. She tells him to take things easy, but he thinks that he has no time to rest since he's reaching the end of his days. Merlin wonders why he's pushing himself so hard, so Eftel explains that he once dreamed of becoming the strongest mage in the world. Unfortunately, despite his incredible dedication and efforts, he was simply unable to catch up with his peers, who became the other 3 of the 4 emperors. Out of the 4, Eftel had always been the oldest, and he struggled to keep up with them even in the battle against the Demon Lord. Merlin tries to convince her master that he's not inferior to anyone, but she knows it's a losing battle. Some days later, one of the kids knocks at Eftel's door with big news. He explains that the Flame Emperor has researched a method to detect a person's magical talent, so he brought over the method to check it out. In this world, magic aptitude has always been a hidden value that nobody could figure out. In order to study magic, magicians would just learn all the lower-level spells of the 4 elements before making a guess about their talent and progressing further in that element. However, if they found a way to accurately determine a person's talents, they could spend their time and resources focusing on just their strengths to achieve new feats. Thinking about this, Eftel takes a look at the method, and he quickly becomes convinced that the Fire Emperor has succeeded. He quickly calls all of his students and sets up 4 vials of water to begin testing their talents. Each of the 4 vials represents the 4 elements: fire, water, wind, and earth. Eftel decides to test Merlin's talent first, dipping a strand of her hair in each vial. This causes each vial to glow in different colors, showing how much talent she has in each element. Since the blue and green vials are glowing the brightest, Eftel determines that Merlin has S-rank talent in both water and wind. The other 2 vials hold a dimmer glow, which means that her earth and fire talents are only B and C grade. Usually, Eftel would be skeptical of an aptitude test, but since he has observed similar talents in Merlin over the years of teaching her, he knows that the test is legit. Blessed with an accurate testing device from the start, Eftel thinks their world will usher in a new era where students can focus on their gifted talents without wasting time. Then, he becomes curious about testing his own talents, although Merlin thinks there's no need, since Eftel is the Lightning Emperor. The old man still wonders if his genetic talent has been holding him back. The rest of the students also get curious, so they agree to test him. Soon, as Eftel's hair is dipped into the vials, the water remains completely colorless. This leaves him completely stunned, since a colorless vial means he has no talent in that element. Throughout his entire life, Eftel has worked much harder than any of his peers just to keep up with them. Now, he feels devastated to think that he had been trying so hard in a race he was never given the tools to win. As the old man struggles to accept this reality, Merlin suggests retaking the test since it's possible they made a mistake. Unfortunately, no matter how many times Eftel takes the test, the water remains as colorless as his barren future. Finally, the old man admits that he has always been genetically inferior to his friends, but he somehow kept up with him through his sheer willpower and hard work. This blow is too much for his pride to handle, and he collapses to the floor in pain. Although Merlin rushes to comfort him, Eftel leaves to rest in his own room, preventing her from seeing him. Inside, he lies on the bed, his body worsening under the stress of his new knowledge. His whole life, Eftel thought he could reach the peak of magic if he simply worked the hardest. Now, with his days coming to an end, he knows it was always a delusion he never had the talent to achieve. The poor man starts crying from frustration, wishing he had more time to just work on himself and improve. Unfortunately, his body soon loses his strength once his will to live completely fades. After passing away, Eftel wakes up in a strange space, opened up by his secret reincarnation skill. There, he meets the Reincarnation Master, who revived him after he had already taken his life from frustration in another world. The Reincarnation Master explains that Eftel has a skill called Indomitable, which allowed him to work so hard despite his pitiful talent. Because of this, he was still able to be on par with the other 4 emperors. Now, the Master gives him another chance to reincarnate with 2 cheat skills of his own choice. She wonders if he simply wants a boosted talent, but Eftel refuses the offer. After working so hard to improve himself with knowledge and skill, he thinks he can do the same in another life with his previous knowledge. The Master nods, admitting that Eftel's immense willpower helped him succeed. Then, while respecting his wishes, she reincarnates him into the same world. Decades before his death, when he was still a child, after waking up, the child Eftel realizes that he still has his memories from his past life. Then, he goes downstairs, where his loving mother rushes to greet him. After smothering her son, she serves breakfast to him. While having breakfast, Eftel realizes that he still remembers how to test his magic talent, so he sneaks out to try it in secret. Unfortunately, despite being reincarnated, he has the body of the same person, so his magic talent is still non-existent. Defeated by this realization, Eftel goes out for some fresh air. Even with his magical knowledge, he thinks he'll hit his genetic limits in this life after reaching level 10 spells. Suddenly, a dragon flies over Eftel, interrupting his thoughts. Shocked, he gets up and sees that a troop of knights is chasing the giant monster to stop it from hurting townsfolk. Eftel rushes to help, but then he remembers he doesn't have the strength from his past life. However, he still remembers the original spell he created for himself in his past life, so he tries to use it. To Eftel's shock, the spell roars to life, creating arrays upon arrays of magical runes. Then, it releases a devastating thunderbolt towards the dragon, which cooks the poor creature alive. Sitting on the ground, shocked, Eftel watches as the dragon plummets lifelessly. In this moment, he realizes that he has not only retained the magical knowledge from his previous life, but also the peak of his magical abilities as a level 10 Lightning Emperor. 3 years pass, and Eftel learns that he's living in the same world from his previous life. However, he was reborn to different parents 400 years after his previous death. His older brother, Frazier, enters through the door and brings his mother some money. Then, he praises Eftel, watching him study his magic books. In this life, Eftel is the son of Duke Orcott, who is a nobleman descended from the original Lightning Emperor. However, Eftel's mom was a talentless commoner, so the rest of Duke Orcott's wives hated her and forced her to live with her son in the middle of nowhere. Despite knowing this bitter reality, the young boy innocently asks Frazier when he'll get to see his dad. The mention of their absent dad is clearly a sore spot, so Frazier tries to comfort him with sweet words. Since Frazier happens to be the Duke's legitimate son, he promises to ask him to meet Eftel. Despite his powerlessness against his dad, the kind young man does his best to take care of his brother and stepmom. Soon, Eftel's mom makes everyone some tea, so Frazier sits down for a chat. He asks his younger brother what he wants to do once he grows up, which sets him off like a bomb. Excited, Eftel tells Frazier that he wants to study magic, but his mom quickly covers his mouth and claims he'll go to military school instead. Since the poor boy has no magic talent, she doesn't want him to get heartbroken in the future. Frazier also thinks it's a great idea to put Eftel into military school. He proudly reveals that he also graduated from one, so he can easily teach his brother and recommend him to a good institute. At first, Frazier picked the military school because he hated his family's tradition of learning magic, but he quickly fell in love with the military life. For the same reason, he thinks that Eftel will have a bright future if he simply takes the easy path in front of him. Delighted by Frazier's enthusiasm, Eftel's mom allows him to take the boy out for some practice. Outside, Eftel works hard to practice sword swings under his brother's guidance. As Frazier cheers him on, Eftel realizes that he had wanted him to go to military school from the start, since he didn't want his younger brother to get disappointed. Still, he hates the idea of giving up on magic just because he lacks the genetics. Knowing that his mom isn't around to stop him, Eftel starts throwing a fit, screaming that he wants to become a mage. Frazier sighs and tries to gently console his brother, but Eftel insists that he can hold mana and cast spells despite his lackluster talent. In his heart, Eftel thinks that magic must have advanced in 400 years, so he hopes to uncover the reason behind his body's limitations by studying in a modern library. Naturally, Frazier has no idea about his brother's schemes, so he gives in to his demands. He tells Eftel that he'll demonstrate a few magic spells, and if he can copy the spells after seeing them, he'll personally recommend him to a magic school. Hearing this, Eftel excitedly agrees, while Frazier thinks he's in for a world of disappointment. He tells Eftel to watch closely before taking a deep breath and starting his incarnation. After performing a whole bunch of complicated movements, Frazier casts a level 2 wind spell, which struggles a bit, but eventually cuts through a thick tree. He thinks that this spell will completely discourage Eftel from even trying magic. To his shock, the young boy is completely unimpressed. Thinking he doesn't know how difficult magic is, Frazier begins to explain, but Eftel casts a spell in the middle of his sentence, which easily cuts through an entire row of trees like paper. Shocked, Frazier wonders how it's possible for his younger brother to be so strong. He also realizes that Eftel just cast a spell without an incarnation, which is an advanced technique only a sage can use. Seeing his brother's reaction, Eftel also realizes he showed off a bit too much. He claims that he accidentally made the spell level 4 instead of 2, which scares the life out of Frazier. For some reason, he thinks level 4 spells are incredibly advanced magic. Hearing this, Eftel gets confused, since level 4 spells are only beginner stuff in his eyes. However, Frazier keeps screaming how insane level 4 spells are, so Eftel softly admits that he can use level 10 spells as well. Hearing this, Frazier literally passes out from shock. Seeing his reaction, Eftel wonders if his magical abilities are too advanced for this world. Back when he killed the dragon, the soldiers chasing it literally thought it was a miracle from God, since they couldn't imagine so much power coming from a mage. Now that he knows how rare his abilities are, Eftel decides to practice his magic in secret. He does some research on the current state of magic, and learns that in this world, magic has actually regressed from its previous peak. In Eftel's previous life, the 4 emperors could reach the pinnacle of level 10 spells, which were considered extremely advanced magic. Somehow, these spells were lost with the passage of time, along with the ability to easily cast spells without incantations. Now, level 8 magic is considered the absolute peak, with anything above it classified as lost technology. Having learned all this, Eftel understands the gravity of his actions, knowing he could be in danger if he got exposed. Once Frazier wakes up, he takes the chance to wipe his memories. He tells the panicking man that he got knocked out by a stray chunk of wood during his spell demonstration. So Frazier thinks that all the wild spells Eftel used were just a nightmare. From that day onward, Eftel continues practicing swordplay with his brother while studying magic in secret, even though he doesn't want to go to military school. The indomitable skill has made him frustrated with all his losses to Frazier. Now, he simply trains to get better for the sole purpose of getting revenge on his brother. Years later, Eftel determines that strengthening his body through martial arts might be the key to breaking the limits on his magic. After years of rigorous practice, he can easily chop through a heavy log like it's nothing. Later, Frazier brings over a special teacher to help him practice. It's a giant man called Moria, who happens to be one of his military colleagues. Surprised, Eftel turns around, impressed by the man's huge size. Moria also sizes him up, remaining silent for the moment. After Frazier introduces him, he challenges Eftel to a fight, offering him the first move. To his surprise, he just turns around and walks away without even giving him a chance to attack. After walking some distance, Moria suddenly stops and taunts Eftel for remaining motionless. He asks the young boy if he doesn't want to attack, knowing that he's immobilized by his immense pressure. Suddenly, he turns around and attacks without warning. Though Eftel dodges the attack, Moria taunts him for being so slow. So he casts a physical enhancement spell on his own body. With his abilities buffed, Eftel charges and attacks the big man. But it's still not enough to break through his defenses. Moria is impressed by Eftel's abilities, so he tells Frazier that he made a good recommendation. Eftel is surprised since he never asked his brother to recommend him, while Frazier praises him for having the ability to infuse his body and weapon with strengthening mana. However, Moria starts laughing, thinking it's hilarious that Eftel can only use his mana for pitiful enhancements instead of casting real spells with it. Angered by his taunts, he decides to beat the crap out of him the old-fashioned way. Eftel lunges at the laughing Moria with his sword, who instantly locks in and blocks his attack. As both of them lock swords, the big man starts mocking him for even dreaming about defeating him. He reminds Eftel that it'll be years before he grows big and strong enough to defeat him. Suddenly, Eftel slips from Moria's sight and appears by his side. Taking advantage of his distraction, he grabs him and throws him to the ground. Although Frazier never taught him hand-to-hand combat, it turns out that Eftel's body still remembers judo from his experiences in another life. As Moria gets up, Eftel thinks he'll get scolded. To his surprise, the big man laughs and gracefully accepts his defeat. He tells Eftel that he has passed his test. So the young boy finally learns that Moria is actually the headmaster of the Azul Military School. Now that Eftel has passed his test, he will officially join the school once he has turned 15 years old. Though Frazier is happy for his brother's success, Moria reminds him not to get too cocky since he hasn't defeated him with a sword yet. Neither Moria nor Frazier realizes that Eftel never wanted military school to begin with, failing to notice the disappointed look on his face. From that day on, Eftel becomes even more secretive with his training. Although he accepts Frazier's help, he gets serious about magic and keeps on pushing himself in the wilderness. Years later, on a stormy day, Frazier is in the house with Eftel's mom, wondering where he is. Feeling sad, she admits that she rarely gets to see her son since he's always training alone somewhere. Meanwhile, in the forest, Eftel, now a teenager, chants his original level 10 spell. Since the spell is too powerful, it requires him to chant it with a magic formation to release its full power. Once the spell is complete, a loud thunderbolt roars down from the sky. But Eftel thinks it took him too long to cast it. Still, he feels satisfied, since he can hide his lightning spells in the storm's cover. Suddenly, a worried Frazier rushes towards him, unaware that his brother was the source of the lightning strike itself. Eftel reassures him that he's doing fine, but Frazier warns him to be more careful. Knowing his risky stunts, he feels worried that his brother will get hurt in the military school. Although Eftel nods at his words, he knows he won't be staying with Frasier much longer. Since both his mother and brother are fixated on turning him into a soldier, he has decided to leave them after becoming an adult. In this world, 15 is considered an adult age, so Eftel will become independent after one more year. After gaining freedom, he plans on joining a magic school on his own. Later, Frasier tells everyone about some good news, revealing that Duke Orcott has agreed to meet Eftel after so many years. Eftel's mom is overjoyed by this news, but he doesn't share her enthusiasm. However, she fails to notice his expression and wishes him the very best for his meeting. Even though Eftel has moved on from his deadbeat dad, he agrees to meet him for the sake of his mother's happiness. Both his mom and Frasier tear up, happy to see their young boy finally grown up. A few days later, Eftel arrives outside the Duke's mansion with his mom and Frasier. Even though he came for the sake of his two family members, he feels excited to see what his descendant looks like. After Frasier takes them inside, Duke Orcott silently observes them. Thinking that his dad is testing him, Eftel steps up and introduces himself. However, the Duke gets offended and tells him to pipe down. He reminds Eftel that he's only an illegitimate eyesore, so he doesn't want him to call him father. Eftel is naturally disappointed, but he remains silent. Duke Orcott sighs, thinking that Eftel is a disgrace to the Lightning Emperor for being born without magic talent. In reality, the actual Lightning Emperor is disappointed by his pathetic descendant. Then, Orcott brings up Eftel's admission into the military academy. On this topic, he starts laughing loudly, so Eftel wonders if he's secretly proud of him. Unfortunately, he soon learns that the Duke is only happy about his scholarship, because it means he won't have to pay for his son's food anymore. In the end, Eftel figures that his father is an irredeemable piece of human scum. As the poor boy wonders why he was called, the Duke calls to his son, Joachim, to test Eftel, thinking that Eftel will embarrass him in public. He orders Joachim to humiliate him by pretending it's a test. Eager to bully his illegitimate brother, Joachim grins sadistically, while Eftel prepares to face him head-on. Soon, they move out to a courtyard for the test battle. Frasier warns Eftel to be careful even if the battle is just a test. He explains that Joachim used to get the top score when he was in military school, so Eftel should be on guard against him at all times. Frasier warns him to surrender if things get bad, so Eftel nods, watching her son face off against the giant man with evil intentions. Eftel's mother feels extremely anxious. Then, Joachim throws him a sword. Although he catches it, the sword's heavy weight catches him off guard. Watching his reaction, Joachim explains that it's a sword made out of hardwood. Usually, these swords are only used for training because of their heavy weight. However, if used against another person, they are strong enough to shatter their bones. After this ominous explanation, Joachim asks Eftel if he knows what's about to happen. Eftel actually acts like he doesn't know, which completely ruins his suspenseful attitude. Angered, Joachim tells Eftel that he wants to teach him and his mother a lesson. He starts insulting his mom as well, claiming that she's a useless woman with zero talent. Joachim doesn't admit that his father fell for her looks. Instead, he claims that she actually begged him to have a child in hopes that her son could inherit his father's magical talent. Saying that Eftel's mom brought disgrace to his noble family, he arrogantly declares that he wants to kill her. However, since she is his father's partner, he cannot directly harm her. Now, Joachim thinks he has the perfect opportunity to vent his frustrations on Eftel instead. Hearing his disrespectful words, Eftel grows angry, but he remains silent. Then, Joachim gives him a head start by letting him attack first. Eftel doesn't move at first, feeling enraged that a prick that Joachim is actually one of his descendants. Watching him remain silent, Joachim thinks he's scared. He starts taunting him even more and hurls another disgusting insult at his mom. This is the final straw for Eftel, who suddenly rushes forward and attacks him. Although Joachim avoids it, he barely manages to save himself. Eftel doesn't give him any time to rest. He continues to land blow after blow, forcing the arrogant man to defend himself. As Joachim holds Eftel's sword, he uses physical enhancement to increase his strength even more. This allows him to push Joachim back. Losing his arrogant attitude from before, Joachim wonders if Eftel is the same kid he was just trash talking a few moments ago. Unfortunately, it's too late for him, since Eftel forces his sword back and smashes his head with its blunt wooden body. In front of everyone's shocked eyes, Joachim goes flying like a rag doll. Watching him lie on the ground, Eftel warns him that he'll end his life if he ever insults his mother again. Then, he goes straight to his mom and tells her it's time to go home. At first, Eftel's mom feels a little scared, thinking that someone strong has replaced her little boy. After he reassures her that he's the same little boy as before, she smiles and takes his hand. Then, Eftel turns to his father and politely thanks him for the invitation. This time, Orkot stays in line and responds in a respectful tone. He simply wishes Eftel good luck with his military exam, after which the family leaves. 2 weeks later, Eftel's mom serves dinner back in their house. They get a knock on their door, so Eftel's mother opens it. However, she gets shocked to see Frasier and Moria standing outside with an unfamiliar baby. It turns out that currently, the kingdom's royal knights and army have left for a battle ceremony with a neighboring kingdom's forces. Since this is the case, only the castle guard was left behind to protect the royal family. Although the castle guards were ready to do their jobs, Frasier had received intel that the minister was planning to assassinate a prince. Soon, Frasier and Moria received news that some barbarians had attacked the southern entrance to the capital. Since the castle guard was required to defend against the attack, Frasier took the baby prince and ran to the safest place he could think of. After hearing this, Eftel nods, trying to understand the situation. In this era, he knows that the previous king had 2 sons. Since the second son was more talented than the eldest, the king passed the throne to him. However, the second son was unable to have any male children, so it seemed as if the eldest son's child would become the next king. Somehow, the second king actually had a baby boy, so now the throne remains in his hands. Jealous of the second king's success, the minister wants to assassinate his prince so the eldest prince could regain the throne. After recalling this, Eftel thinks something is strange with Frasier's story. He asks how the barbarians even made it to the capital, since the castle guards were still on high alert. Hearing this, Frasier admits that his father was behind this conspiracy. Although it pains him to admit it, he knows that his father will benefit from the eldest son's authority, so he most likely assisted the barbarians. Moria wonders what they should do next, so Frasier explains that a return to the capital is impossible. For the time being, their only hope is to secretly cross the kingdom's borders and reunite the prince with the main army. Later, as Frasier and Moria prepare to leave, Eftel asks to join them. Although his mother gets extremely worried, Moria feels happy, thinking that they'll need his assistance. Despite his mother's worries, Eftel wants to go to repay one of the previous kings. In his previous life, the king had supported him and his friends greatly against the demon lord. Now, it's his time to help him by protecting his descendants. Soon, he leaves with Frasier and Moria. While making their way to the border, they all notice that the surroundings are surprisingly quiet. Suddenly, thunder starts booming nearby, and the group realizes that their current location is dangerous. They rush to escape the forest, failing to realize that someone is chasing them. However, when they finally arrive at the end of the forest, they all stop in shock. In front of them stands Duke Orkot and his entire army of mages. At first, Frasier is unable to believe that his father would do such a thing. Unfortunately, he also knows that his dad isn't here to give the young prince a royal welcome. Moria wonders if they should turn back, but Eftel points out that someone set the entire forest behind them on fire. Realizing they're cornered, Moria wonders what they should do, since there's no way to run. Frasier decides to talk it out with his father. Hearing this, Moria is shocked. He warns Frasier not to trust the shady duke, but Frasier hopes that his father will be willing to listen. Then, he discards his weapons and moves out unarmed. After announcing his presence, he loudly asks the duke to turn back. He offers him a chance to negotiate, but Orkot doesn't move yet. Joachim asks him what to do next, so the duke gets off his mount to speak to his son directly. Watching his father walk towards him, Frasier's face lights up. Thinking that he's willing to negotiate, he moves closer to Orkot. However, the selfish duke coldly attaches a metal clip to Frasier's body and tells him to get out of the way. He uses a strong electric magic to shock him, knocking the poor man out of commission. After brutally tasing his own son, the duke starts laughing like he has achieved some kind of victory. Then, he orders his mage army to cast a powerful spell using a formation. Watching them arrange the spell, Eftel rushes out to protect his brother. However, Moria holds him back to prevent him from getting hurt. Then, a powerful lightning bolt strikes the area where Frasier had fallen. The lightning bolt's glow forces Eftel to close his eyes. When he opens them, he realizes that the entire ground has been ravaged by hot flames. He knows that Frasier was completely innocent, trying to protect a mere baby. Memories with his brother flash through Eftel's mind as he thinks back. Knowing that Orkot was so merciless towards his own kind son, he grows furious like never before. This time, he refuses to hold back a single bit. As the fires rage around them, Moria notices that Eftel's expression has changed. He feels worried for the young boy, but Eftel reassures him that he'll teach the Duke and his forces a proper lesson for killing his brother. He walks out, using a level 9 ice spell that instantly puts out all the fires. Watching the ice devour the fire like it's nothing, The Duke and his entire army are completely speechless. Eftel knows that they're shocked since they've never seen a spell of this caliber before. Although he specializes in lightning magic, he knows that even his weaker water spells are too much for these buffoons to handle. Eftel reminds the Duke that he taught all his descendants how to fight as the Lightning Emperor. Now, he thinks they're a bunch of arrogant morons who can only bully the weak. After squinting for a bit, Orcott realizes that the boy walking towards him is his own son. His immediate reaction is to order his mages to use their spells to blast him to shreds. The mages nod and shoot a massive volley of level 5 fire arrows towards Eftel. To their shock, he remains completely unharmed behind a magic shield. However, even after seeing this, Orcott refuses to surrender. He orders his mages to use their ultimate spell. So they combine a level 6 lightning spell with their formation. Once the lightning spell is charged, they release the attack, using the name Eftel after their ancestor, the Lightning Emperor. However, Eftel only feels insulted by their pathetic attempt. Somehow, Eftel shrugs it off like it was nothing. Watching this scene, the mages are horrified. Eftel laughs in their faces before suddenly teleporting into their ranks. Before they can even react, he starts cutting through them like weeds. While chopping the mages up, he feels grateful that Frazier taught him how to use the sword. Now, he can use the same skills to avenge his fallen brothers. The remaining mages run away, terrified of Eftel's monstrous strength. However, he refuses to let them get away. He begins charging up his own lightning spell, proudly declaring that this is how a real Lightning Emperor fights. Then, he releases the Leave 10 lightning spell, Eftel, which torches the entire army of mages into cinders. After the dust from the explosion clears, Duke Orcott and Joachim are surprised that they're still alive. Eftel walks towards them, explaining that he didn't want the masterminds of the attack to die so easily. First, he knocks out Joachim before turning to Orcott. Although the Duke tries to protest, Eftel knocks him out all the same. Later, both of them are arrested by the royal family, found guilty of assassination. Both men get executed in public. Meanwhile, Eftel learns that Frazier actually survived the brutal spell. It turns out that he was wearing a family heirloom as a guarding charm, which saved his life. Seeing the charm, Eftel recalls that he gave this pendant as a gift to his descendants in his previous life. Overjoyed to see his brother safe, he smiles and hugs Frazier. Because Frazier risked his life to protect the young prince, the royal family transferred the power of the Duke to him. Now, Eftel is free to show his power to both Moria and Frazier, since he displayed it on the battlefield. Although both of them are surprised, they allow Eftel to keep the source of his power a secret. Then, Eftel announces that he wants to attend magic school. This time, Frazier doesn't stop him, since he knows his brother is capable of teaching an entire city on his own. With the approval from his brother, things are set for Eftel to begin a new journey in this life. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.